Hello and welcome to the Unusual Stories podcast. My name is Wojciech Salski, and as always, I will be here to give you a few ideas and hopefully inspirations regarding the life, philosophy of life, maybe slightly, and in general, the world. So today, as a part of our 10 episodes book review season, I'm preparing for you a book by Jordan Peterson, one of my favorite of all time in terms of self-development, 12 Rules for Life. And I know it's quite late to be introducing this book, considering last year we've already talked through the Maps of Meaning, which is a much bigger and much broader and much more in-depth as well work of his. And it might come as a surprise that I'm coming back right now to you with 12 Rules for Life, and then in next week or the week after, Beyond Order, 12 more rules for life. But I think it's fair to say, and I think it's fair to do. So here we are. Before I start as well, I just wanted to let you know, thank you so much for your support, for your listening, for your watching. If you do, please do let me know how you're finding those new format videos that I'm creating. I'm also working on a new Instagram page for our podcast, and I've created some links that will be available for you, so it's much easier to navigate and maybe engage in a conversation regarding the topics or around the topics that we're covering in those episodes. So I'm sort of opening the doors for you slightly more, and hopefully you will be able to give me some feedback and just let me know, how you're finding it. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Maybe I should go back to my usual format of audio only, and that's fair to say. So I'm more than happy to take any feedback, and you will find all the links necessary below, as well as on my site. And furthermore, if you'd like to support me by buying me a coffee or supporting me in any other way, feel free to send it over or send me a message saying what I do well, what I don't do well, what you'd like me to review, maybe a book that you'd like to suggest, and I'll definitely look into that. I am studying and working at the same time as I do these, but this is my hobby and my passion. So nevertheless, I'm pretty sure I will find time for it one way or the other. Sometimes you just sleep slightly less, but that's life. Okay, so coming back to our 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, I'm really sorry to say that I'm going to be gazing back and forth at you and at my piece of paper over here. This is why I've prepared, that's because, sorry, that I've prepared some texts here for you, and I've written down some notes, and they are extensive. So I'll try to find my way around them. Usually I'm much more spontaneous, but because of the nature of the work of Jordan Peterson, out of respect for him and for his input into my life through his works, I thought that I'll give you as much in-depth ideas from me as I can about this book. So it's important to say, I think, that this is the second time that I've read it. I've read this book, I think 3 years ago for the first time, somewhere around the time when I was getting into listening, or maybe even more than 3 years now, listening to more lectures by Jordan Peterson and finding them really, really helpful, especially in the sphere of relationships and sort of dealing with life's drama. And this year round, I was given this as a present from my friend, and for which I'm very grateful. He was able to attend one of his lectures, and he got me the book. So I read it again, like a paper copy, because the first time I read it audible style. And so here we are. And I think the best way to summarize it is like a readable take on life's philosophy. It's an easy read. It's not necessarily easy in a way that it's simple, but it is easy because Mr. Peterson uses extensively plenty of different examples throughout the book to portray the problems that he's talking about. And the layout of the book is also quite straightforward. There are 12 rules, and each rule is a chapter. Sometimes those chapters might be longer, sometimes shorter, but for the most part, there is an introduction to the idea, then a bunch of examples, and finally a summary, maybe what we can do to address this. So it's a very approachable way, even if you're not an avid reader, and even if you've not tackled philosophical or sort of more abstract reads before. I think it's still something that you can easily relate to. And the examples given, I'm pretty sure they will be updated from time to time as well. I wouldn't be surprised. But the examples given are very straightforward. So it's one of those books that I would argue anyone above the age of 15, 16 could relate to and could read. So just as a side note, maybe, as I've mentioned, maps of meaning, if you do remember, maps of meaning, when we talked about it, is a much more in-depth analysis of the mythos and the legends and sort of how we as humans create meaning out of chaos, how we make sense of it all. And the biggest contrast between those two books, even though they are sort of portraying similar ideas, is Maps of Meaning is very academic and is very extensive. And I think it has somewhere around, my version had somewhere around 900 pages in Polish version. So it's a Bible of a sort in terms of the volume and the in-depth analysis that you get, and a broad range of ideas that are portrayed. It's like a work of art, and at the same time a work of science. Whereas 12 Rules for Life, I would argue that is a much more of a usual book, the way that you imagine an average book that you would pick up and read for the betterment of yourself. It's probably somewhere around there. I think it has somewhere around 300 pages, so it's a much more approachable read for anyone of you that will feel encouraged after this show to explore it. So I was thinking, what should I do? How should I talk about this book without giving you too much of it? Because the concept, especially the 12 rules that are portrayed and sort of inviting us to consider, I think they're simple enough that I could just read them out to you, and you would probably be at least 1/4 into understanding what the whole book is about. And I don't want to give you too much of that. You can easily just Google what the rules are. You can look through them. So I've decided to yet again do a little spin-off of it on my own accord. And I've chosen 3 rules that I would like to talk about because they truly resonated with me, and they've given me a lot of power and sort of might for skillful action in the past. And then I will sort of summarize, I will recommend, explain why do I recommend this book to you, and I'll give you one more special treat at the very end, okay? So I hope that way you will be able to understand what is the layout slightly more and what the ideas might be, but you will be intrigued enough to still explore it for yourself, because I must say, I'm just a person, and my take on these ideas might not be the same as your will be. So the first rule that I wanted to talk about is a very powerful one that says, stand up straight with your shoulders back. And then just take a moment to hear that. So stand up straight with your shoulders back. So you might say, well, that's easy, right? Just sort of straighten up, probably for the benefit of health. And I think there is more to that. And of course, there must be. A great story that portrays it, that really is one of those fun facts that I share with my friends or family when we end up talking about that, is apparently when we straighten up, I don't know if you've heard about a power pose or just like basically standing straight up instead of slouching or sort of, making yourself feel smaller in a way. It actually impacts the posture itself, actually impacts our hormonal system. So we can actually impact our mood through the chemistry that is originating from the way that our body is positioned, which is mind-blowing, I think, and also quite powerful. And the story that Mr. Peterson shares repeatedly in many of his speeches as well is the story about lobsters and how those crustaceans from many, like thousands, hundreds of generations before us in terms of being our ancestors in a way, and how they are guided by the same system in terms of their hormonal changes based on their pose. So the story is that when lobsters fight for territory, there is always one winner and one loser in a fight, right? So whenever a lobster wins, it will straighten up more. It will become more of a, take up more space with the way it holds itself up. And whenever a lobster loses, it will slouch slightly. It will become more sort of smaller in a way in terms of occupying the space around it, let's say. And there has actually been studies that shown that when a lobster loses a fight and becomes smaller through that slightly, it is more likely to lose a fight again. And so when the lobster wins a fight, it is more likely to win the next one as well, which I think makes sense. If you think about your experiences in those days when everything seems to be going swimmingly, you're more likely to feel confident doing something that otherwise would maybe put you on the edge or whatever, and similarly in fights and in games, in sports, it's a sort of thing that we might want to explore and see for ourselves, but for the most part it does make sense, and it did definitely make sense to me. And it resonated with me deeply, but not necessarily because of that. That's just the background story of what this standing up straight is about. But the idea is that when you stand up straight, when you hold yourself up, when you don't look down, when you're sort of walking, keeping your chin up, as they say, keeping your head up, as they say, you're much more likely to be taken seriously. You're much more likely to be taken as a person of confidence and skill. And you're much less likely to be abused and stressed by other people or attacked, for example, in a victim kind of a situation, especially, on the street or whatever. Of course, these are not things that we, as lucky people in the countries, cities, places that are quite safe, I would argue, at least in Edinburgh, I don't feel scared at all walking down the street at night. Of course, they might not be so useful, but still they are. You're much more likely to look confident, and you're much more likely to potentially be considered for a job, or potentially be considered for a potential mate for someone, because you stand up straight, you hold yourself straight, you hold yourself up. And thanks to that, your hormonal system is recognizing that you're someone that is confident, powerful, and more happy. So it's as important for you in terms of your professional or relationship, as well as your well-being and sort of mental health. And the invitation about this one, about this rule for you for the upcoming days, is definitely to consider, how do you stand? What poses do you take? Do you slouch a lot? Do you look people in the eye when you meet them, or do you look down? When you walk down the street, do you look underneath your feet or at your phone, or do you look in front? And you might find it's not actually that easy. You know, I find it with myself regularly, even though I don't consider myself to be that anxious as a person as I used to be. I still sometimes find it uncomfortable to be just looking up and meeting the gaze of others as we walk. And I wonder why sometimes, and why do we do that to ourselves, you know? Because I'm pretty sure all of us could use some smile and a friendly gaze instead of pretending as if we don't exist. But one thing that you can do is you can stand up straight with your shoulders back for the benefit of yourself and others. When it comes to rule number 2 that I wanted to share with you today is something much more on the self-compassion front. So once we strengthen ourselves by standing up straight and just being more confident with the way we are, it's important to notice that you should not and you could not compare yourself with others. So the second rule states, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And you know, first of all, I think that this is quite powerful to start with. Consider the fact that it's almost impossible to compare yourself fairly, you know, and in depth with other people once by the time you're, you know, sort of an adult, by the time you're 16 even, because there's too much complexity. How are you supposed to compare your situation with someone else's situation, considering the complexity of even one day? Consider for a moment just how much can happen in one day. How many different changes and how many different tiny decisions we make in one day that will inevitably influence our life later on. Consider that. And then if you multiply it by the amount of months and then by the number of years, you can see that it's pretty much impossible to fairly and knowingly compare yourself with anyone, even with your closest ones, even with people that you would consider to know for the whole life. And for me, that was a very powerful realization, let's say, sort of letting me feel okay with the way that other people are, because I just cannot know how they are, you know. And social media here is such a big issue in that regard, because we do see people on the daily basis, especially if you do engage with social media. We do see people that we care about, people that we might not care about, in all of different scenarios. And for us, it seems usually that they are very happy, you know, very successful, very grateful, very whatever. Whereas the truth is, we don't know. We don't know what's their situation as much as they don't know what's ours. And I rarely want to post on social media when I have a really bad day. Sometimes, like yesterday, I was struggling slightly yesterday with some ideas and feeling quite down. And I was even struggling to talk with my girlfriend. I just felt like down with energy. And the last thing I want to do is I want to share with the whole world that I'm having a bad day. And I'm pretty sure you do too. So just remember, don't compare yourself to others. And that's such a cliche, right? And everyone tells it to us. But then for 12 years when we're at school, the only thing we do is compare ourselves to others because that's how the system is designed there. All the grades and grading and, the numbers in the list. And later on, it's very difficult to make sure that you don't. So an invitation here for the upcoming week is to focus on yourself a bit more and consider as well when you are on social media on deleting or unfollowing the accounts that you see that make you feel jealous or unhappy about your situation, that make you feel jealous about theirs and unhappy about yours. This is something that I've been trying to do for the past couple of, I think, months. Every now and then when I see a post that creates in me this sort of desire that is not too pleasant, or a sort of thought that makes me feel weak or unhappy, I just unfollow. What's the point? Why am I feeding myself that, If I'm deciding to spend my time on social media in the first place, the last thing I want is for it to be to the detriment of my mental health and well-being. So that's something to think about, Compare yourself with only who you were yesterday, not with who someone is today. Finally, the third point is something that I've recently discovered to be by far one of the most powerful approaches one can take in life, and I'm truly surprised with just how powerful and how useful it may be. And the rule is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. And the funny thing here, the sort of the irony here is that it's quite hard to never lie if you think about it. You might say, hearing my words, like, oh no, I don't lie. I don't lie generally. Well, okay. How about all those white lies that you tell yourself or others, or you hyperbolize in your stories on the daily basis? These can be really, really silly and small things. And I'm not saying they are as bad as lying someone in the face about something that is truly, outrageous or bad. But we do tell a lot of lies. And I don't remember the exact number, but I did read somewhere that we tell, I think it was somewhere around 1,000 lies daily. And these are obviously not to the detriment of others to such an extent that they would pursue us for them. But they are definitely, in a way, some sort of getaways from something, And I'm pretty sure you do too. I'm pretty sure we all lie to ourselves from time to time, whether about the satisfaction that we have, whether about the choices that we make, what about the motivations or situations that we go through. And I guess the invitation here is to avoid lying in general, as long as you can catch yourself on that. And that will be a great, great start. Mr. Peterson says in one of his lectures, as well as in the book, that he made a pact with his wife, which is so powerful, I think, that they will never lie to one another. That whatever hell or high water comes, and they will tell the truth. And I think, in general, that's a very, very noble and a great approach, great goal to have with your family, friends, with your loved ones, with people that are closest to you in particular. Because, the world as we know it, we don't know that much. And as much as we know is useful. But the moment we start sort of twisting the texture of this world by lying, we're making even that tiny part that is useful to us not useful, and it might even become dangerous to us or others in the long run. And I found personally that there is a great power in telling the truth, or at least not lying. For the past few months, I've kept myself in check in making sure that, not to say that I'm always just very, very rude when I want to be rude. Rather, I will not stop myself from saying what I think, as long as it's to the benefit of the situation. This is not to say that you should go around being rude to people. Rather, you should make sure that you go around and whatever you tell people is at least not a lie. And ideally, it's the truth. And ideally, it's the truth that is both for you and for them, the truth, which is another topic maybe to discuss later. But a quote from Mark Twain that I think really hits home with this point is that he who never lies doesn't have to remember what he said. And I just find it so powerful, If you consider after this episode that still some lies are useful to you, well, consider it how useful will there be to you later on when you get tangled in them all. Because if you lie, you need to remember what you said. And if you don't, you kind of not have to remember what you said, because at least that was the truth. And, the story of Pinocchio and the idea of, in Polish, we have a saying that lie has really short legs, that it does not get away far. And I truly do believe so to be true. And I would like you to consider not lying and telling the truth. So the challenge for this week for this is to try for a week and keep yourself in check. First and foremost, after this episode, or maybe right now, you can press a little pause and consider this. Think where and when you lie the most, in what situations, circumstances, to what people, and think why. And consider what can you do to stop yourself from doing that, and what do you get from doing that in the first place. The moment you understand your motives and your intentions, you can rewrite that script. You can flip the page and sort of start over. So try it for a week. And after a week, you'll see that it does miracles and you won't want to stop. I promise you that. So yeah, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. So before I go to my little treat to the end, I just wanted to give you some ideas. Why do I recommend this book in the first place? And personally, all of works by Jordan Peterson, and I can't wait for his new book that is hopefully gonna come out next year, Wrestling with God. We Who Wrestle with God, I believe is the title. I'm a great fan of his work, and he has helped me tremendously, both through his lectures, through his books, through his podcast. I listen to his podcast avidly, and this is not to say that I agree with everything that he says, but this is definitely to say that I appreciate the way that he tries to analyze and go into the ideas of the world, and not be afraid to ask questions that might seem difficult. And I think that's the key to an independent thinking and to a healthy society in the first place. The moment we stop being able to ask questions about uncomfortable topics, I think we're falling into tyranny of a sort. So personally, the 12 Rules for Life helped me get my stuff together. It helped me to focus on myself more and much less on what others do. I am still guilty as charged of looking at others, and I guess that's something that never really truly leaves you. But I definitely put much more effort in doing my own stuff, and I hope that that can be seen as well by those around me. I hope that I'm doing a good job. And it helped my relationships, especially the tell the truth or at least don't lie part. It's sort of freeing, like in the Bible, they say the truth shall set you free. It truly does, because the moment you tell your truth, the other person has a choice. For example, in terms of relationships, they can leave you, which is fair, or they can stay with you and know for sure that this is what you stand for. And that is a very powerful thing, because we go into relationships and we expect all kinds of things from others, and others expect all kinds of things from us. But I think it's much more valuable to see the person as they are. And if you still appreciate them, knowing what you know about them, then that's a great relationship, I think. And that's what I wish for you, my friend. So one last rule that I wanted to share with you that I think is really, really, really powerful, and I would like to finish with that, is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. And I think personally that currently, especially currently with our current climate in terms of politics, in terms of different decisions and divisions of ideas, this is so, so important, Get your stuff together. Really, truly work on yourself first before you go to someone else's house and tell them how to fix up their kitchen. Or, don't give people advice on finance if you struggle with finance. Don't criticize the politicians for their inability to figure out what to do if you do not understand the topic they're talking about. First, figure it out for yourself. Do your due diligence, pick up your cross and bear it. And once you do that, go out there and help others fix theirs. I think you would be surprised with how fast and how greatly in great might they come to you for support the moment you do that with yourself. Because for me, the way that I imagine it is we're sort of like magnet fields. And when we do get some stuff together, it's almost like getting on a different frequency. And then all of those that do not get that together just yet are drawn towards our frequency, so they can also figure that out. And that is why I believe that you should first set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. So yeah, these are some points and some ideas that I do believe are valuable and a valuable part of the 12 Rules for Life by Dr. Jordan Peterson. And I hope that you enjoyed this little review. I hope that you enjoyed the episodes that come after, and I hope that you enjoyed the read. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you so much for your time. And yeah, as always, feel free to reach out. I hope to be of help, and I will keep you updated about all the other exciting things that are happening regarding the podcast. Other than that, stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time.